Tucked away in a lonely corner of Nerang Cemetery is the almost forgotten grave of Julian Batten, or Jock as he was known. Once his name was a household word throughout the district. For almost 25 years he was the Mailman of Numinbah.
Jock was my uncle, great uncle actually. As a young boy I used to spend weekends with him on his farm just outside Nerang, where he spent his retirement years. Around the fireplace at night he used to hack out a tune on his old violin and tell many stories and experiences of his packhorse days. I can remember him as quite a character.
Jock was born in 1874 at Pimpamar. The following year he came to Nerang with his family, where his father, Charles Batten, took up a selection on the Nerang River, just upstream from where Whedon's Crossing is today. In his youth, I suspect he was a bit of a wild colonial boy. He turned his hand to many things. He was a timber cutter for a while, an expert with the adze and the broad axe. He worked with the gangs cutting sleepers for the new railway line that was being built from Nerang to Coolangatta. Jock took up a selection in the Numinbah Valley, right under the brow of Springbrook. But farming wasn't really for him. He was a true bushman. He never married. You could say he was married to a saddle. He would never ride in a car, but had complete faith in his horses. He could always be recognised from a distance by his upright stance in the saddle. Then in 1910 he obtained the contract to carry mail twice weekly up the Numinbah Valley as far as Yawn Sawmill, where the Yawn family ran the post office from their home. Jim Yawn, a descendant of that sawmilling family, can recall Jock's visits in the early 1930s.
I suppose my earliest recollections of Jock would be among my first childhood memories. I can remember going down with Mum and Dad. As always an event when Jock arrived, always at night in my memory. Jock always claimed the kids could say Jock before they could say Mum or Dad, and I suppose that was pretty right. Little Yawn was the main post office attendant, and they'd always give Jock his evening meal, and he'd have a few wisecracks and a feed, a bit of a yarn. He'd go over to the humpy the mill hands used to stay in and bunk down there, probably after a game of cards and a yarn again.
Bella Mackenzie was also an early mail carrier, riding her horse twice weekly down the steep track known as Bella's Track from Beechmont. At the time, this was the only way that mail from the settlers on the plateau got through. She would arrive at Yawn Sawmill and meet up with Jock to hand over the mail for Nerang. Later on, Jock's twice weekly service was changed to 3 times a week, and the run was extended up the valley past Natural Bridge to the border. That meant a day up and a day back. So Jock was in the saddle for 6 days a week.
It led to a few wisecracks about the thickness of the hide on Jock's posterior. The butcher in Nerang, Frank Turner, you'd see Jock riding past up the station street in Nerang and come out of the butcher's shop. He'd somewhat unkindly say, "Hurry up and die, you old bastard. My boots need resoling and I want a strip of leather off your bum." Jock had replied kindly and never fazed by a bit of hassling. One story that I believe is true, 1 clock per household probably in those days, and the clock had stopped. The husband was outside and he sang out to his wife, set the clock for 2 o'clock. Old Jock's just gone past, so it'll be within 5 minutes of it. So he's pretty regular in his times. How he coped year in, year out with floods. The track virtually went along the river, so I would imagine there would be delays in deliveries, but certainly did his best and was a wonderful best.
Jock's brother Arthur also took up a selection in the valley in an area known as the Pocket. It was a barn on Arthur's property that became the social gathering place for the whole district. Regular dances were held. Nephew Joe Hind used to play the button accordion. Jock would sometimes pick up his trusty violin and try a tune. The property was sold, and now the old barn is gone. In its place is a new modern barn. But history has turned full circle. Today the property is owned by Joy and Ted Durry, and Joy is a great niece of Jock. At a family gathering, she brought out the photograph album to talk about the old days.
This was where the old Batten barn used to stand. It was rebuilt before we came here.
Back in September 1988, the newspapers covered the bicentennial reenactment of the Packhorse mail delivery, honouring the pioneer mail carriers of the district, which featured Joy's son John. Well-known artist Tom McGowan captured the moment for posterity.
John is Jock's great-great nephew. He was taking the part of Jock Batten. He came across our property and across the river, which they tell us was the path that Jock would have ridden many years ago.
Stories of Jock were never far from the conversation.
As my dad always said, Jock had a great lot of character.
Nerang has certainly seen some changes since Jock picked up the mail so long ago.
Dad would shake his head and say, if only old Jock could see this, he'd say, Jesus bloody Christ.
Jock was more than a mailman. He was the vital link between the settlers of Numinbah Valley and the township of Nerang.
He would be given money and asked to bring medicines and run small errands, and unfailingly he did so in his cheerful, chirpy manner. He's quite a man, quite a lad, old Jock. He dedicated his life really to the people in Numinbah Valley.
There is no doubt there are many stories that can be told about our early settlers. But among my boyhood memories, the story of Jock stands out. It may be that the basic Australian personality has been moulded by early characters like Jock Batten. Outspoken, with a pithy humour, a bit of a larrikin, but with a heart of gold. Today, only a grave marks Jock's passing, but men like him are not forgotten.